Welcome to the Web3 track room. Thank you for coming. I think there'll be some stragglers, but let's get going so there's plenty of time for our next speaker. We'll be listening to Grace Ng speak about how using art to question the ethics of Metaverse design. So without further ado, please give Grace a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so today I'm going to share about how I've been using a combination of art and Web3 to question the ethics of Metaverse design. So what that includes is I've been using a lot of AI as well as AR, VR, Metaverse world building, and Web3 technologies to really raise awareness of a lot of societal issues, one of them being the ethics of data privacy and AI and the Metaverse. So this is a bit about me and my background. So I do I'm an artist, creator. I do a lot of kind of like multimedia art projects. This is actually an AR filter that's based on this t-shirt where it turns you into the character. And so I think with the last talk, which is about role-playing as your character, this kind of like brings that to another level where you can just like pick up your phone and just become the character that you're wearing on your t-shirt. This one was done at AR House. Shout out to the crew here. Yes, this is AR portal, and basically what I was doing here was I was expanding on the world that I created in my film. So I'll show you the film later. I'll do a little film screening, but basically this is a scene. One of the scenes in the film actually triggers an AR filter where you can walk into the room that the character is in. And so this really expands on empathy when we're watching any movie where we just see like one frame of where the character is in, but then through augmented reality, we can actually expand on the world and look around and see the other items in the room that the character is sitting in. And then this is just an example of some AI animation that I've been doing. This was a model that was trained on my own face, where now I can just put myself into any scene, become any character using AI. I also do longer AI films. This is just one example, a snippet. So yeah, AI is really good for a lot of like surreal storytelling, which is what I like to explore. So this was me a few years ago. This was my first art installation where I was working on brain-computer interfaces. So I was very interested in taking brain data and then being able to create art experiences with that. But then on another level, I really want to shed light on societal subconscious, and so help people become more aware of their subconscious mind. And so with our brain activity, we're always emitting a lot of bioactivity, so electrical activity firing from the neurons, and that is measured as alpha, beta, theta, and delta signals, and sometimes gamma. Just a little bit of what these mean is alpha and theta is what you're going to be emitting when you're in a more relaxed state. And so if you're meditating, it's going to be more alpha state. If you're getting to that very deep creative flow state, that's going to be more of a theta state. But if you're really stressed out, or if you're doing math problems, or if you're like just doing a lot of cognitive processing, that's going to be in beta state. And so at the time, I was really worried about like the mental health issues, and I really wanted to help people just get more meditative and be more aware of all the subconscious voices and thoughts that are going on in their minds. So it was just an art installation to help people start meditating. And this is a little bit of what it looks like. So I collaborated with a sound healer on this. And the painting changes colors based on your emotional state. So this is more blue and purple, so it's more meditative. The blue is alpha, and then the purple is theta, so it's the meditative creative flow frequencies. And then you see a flash of orange, that's distraction, that's stress. So that can kick in when you're stressed out or distracted or doing math problems or something.
Imekai kurasu
And that's the brain sensor. So that's the sensor I put on to listen to brain activity. So yeah. So these are some examples of art pieces that I've done, and a lot of them were all to raise awareness of some kind of societal issue. And so it was when I was working on this, and then I was trying to figure out how to monetize it. At the time I was doing a lot of art exhibits, so just exhibiting at music festivals, but I was trying to figure out how to monetize it, and then some corporations started coming to me asking me, oh, hey, can we use your technology to track how our consumers are responding to commercials? And then I got that kind of like, a lot of people were asking me repeatedly to use it for tracking consumers' engagement with commercials. And then that's kind of like when like all the red flags went up, and I was just like, oh no, this is not what I intended it to be, and this is not where I would hope this technology gets put to use. So that's kind of like how I got really interested in neuroethics and biodata ethics, and just what the future would look like if, with the metaverse and with all the hardware and IoT sensors that we have, but we're all emitting so much bioactivity and so many biosignals from our body at any single second. And I just got really worried, just really devastated with like, okay, is no one not talking about this? Is no one not thinking about this? We have to do something about it. So then I started making a film recently to really highlight and share my concerns about that. And so that's kind of like where I'll get into some of the metaverse ethics here. So that was my project. I made that around like 2017. And then when I was doing exhibits, I was meeting a lot of these other startups that were working on brain-computer interfaces. And this is kind of like the state of where everything is going, because I was getting worried about it back in like 2017, 2016. But as of recently, in the last few years, you can see all of these augmented reality companies, metaverse companies are acquiring brain-computer interface startups. All of these, and then there's also the one on the upper right hand is actually a augmented reality contact lens. Unfortunately, they just like pivoted away from that because they couldn't get enough traction with that. It was like, but the technology is there. The CEO was able to like put an AR contact lens into his eye and change what he was looking at in the real world. And then some of these other ones, so for example, Control Labs, it's, so some of the other technologies is actually just like reading brain activity, but what Control Labs does differently is it's actually recording your motor neurons that's going down your arm, and that is actually more effective at getting data, because sometimes brain activity can be very noisy. But with motor neurons, you have finer control over it. And so what they were able to do is actually like create typing interfaces. So basically you can use AI to like train it on your like what letters you're thinking of, and then you can actually like be able to like type it out from like thought to kind of like without touching the keyboard. You can just type in VR, for example. And so those are some of the technologies that are coming out. And while it's exciting, it's also concerning, because we haven't figured out a standard way of not just data privacy, but biodata privacy. So to quote from another AI researcher, Michaela Matigna, she says, "We are heading into a world where technology is going to be able to decode information from our brains, but only to implant or manipulate what's going on inside." So we really need to like think about that, where it's not just about like reading information, but it can also be used to manipulate information. So this is where it goes into all the ethical concerns of the metaverse. So first, we have the data privacy issue, but it's not just data privacy, because in the metaverse, it's going to be biodata privacy, so mental and biological privacy. Again, we're constantly emitting signals that we're subconscious about. So if you think that just like mouse clicks and advertisers buying ads and selling ads based on mouse clicks, but now we have eye tracking. And eye tracking, we're not necessarily as conscious of our intent with eye gaze. So we can just accidentally look anywhere, and then advertisers in the metaverse can pick up on that information and sell you even more ads based on that. Inclusion. So we have to think about designing for inclusion, diversity, and accessibility. So as we all know right now, with access to the metaverse, it's still not very accessible, a lot of hardware components, but then also when we think about diversity, so this becomes really important when, for example, even with avatar selection. So the metaverse represents so many different types of people, so thinking about not just accessibility across the world, but also accessibility across genders, across creative expressions, however people want to represent themselves. User safety. So we're not just thinking about physical boundaries, but we're thinking about virtual and mental boundaries as well. So right now, within an Oculus headset, you can kind of like get a sense of, oh, there's physical harm, but it's not just about physical harm anymore. It's about just the virtual people that you're interacting with, virtual mental boundaries. They might be saying something to you that you don't like. There needs to be options to mute them. They could be dancing in front of you that you don't like, or they could be like touching you, your virtual avatar body, and you might not like that. And so all of these considerations to think about when we're designing for the metaverse. So I was kind of like wrangling with all these big questions, and I didn't know what to do about it. So I decided to work on a film to really raise awareness of these issues. So in Crash Punks, the film, it's about this character who goes into the metaverse to explore their identity, but then the metaverse is populated with all these AI avatars that are programmed to seduce humans to extract their data and biodata information. And so it's kind of exploring what that world would look like and what the consequences of that could be. And this is just episode 1. And I'm working on episode 2 and 3 this summer. But within episode 1, you can kind of like see a bit of that premise set up. And just to give you a little backstory, Crash Punks actually started off as an NFT collection on Bitcoin. So I was doing, I started it off as an NFT collection called Crash Punks. It was actually inspired by Snow Crash. So early on, we had Neil Stevenson coming in to give a talk to my NFT community, and these are some of the collectors in the community. And I'll show you. So this was last year, actually, this time last year, because Snow Crash came out on June 1st. So June 1st of last year, I actually brought in Neil Stevenson to give a talk. And I became the first avatar to interview Neil Stevenson, which is really funny because he wrote about avatars back in the 90s, but like no avatar has ever interviewed him. But then, so he still doesn't know what I look like because he just met me as this, little anime character. And then since then, we've also built games. So doing a lot of immersive world building with my collection. So built this battle RPG game. And then we're also launching a token tomorrow. This is called the Snow Token. And then we also crowdfunded to fund the film that I worked on. So this is kind of like one of the tickets that collectors could buy in order to become a character in the film. So that's kind of how part of my funding model came to be. For funding the film was collectors got to be part of the film. They got to name their characters. They got to become part of the story. And this is, the whole film. So I'll show you the film, and maybe you can kind of like pick up on some clues as to how I was trying to raise awareness of some of the ethical concerns that I just talked about.
Guess you're new around here.
What? Who are you?
Hi, I'm Dara. Nice to meet you.
What do you want?
Whoa, hey. I'm just here to show you around.
No, thanks.
Figured you need some help.
No, I'm fine.
Sure. Suit yourself.
Actually, I could use some company.
Well, that's what I'm here for. Come on, let me show you around.
How'd I get here?
So here in the Metaverse, all you have to do to get around is just think of where you want to be, and you'll be there.
This is the carnival I used to go to.
You like carnivals?
It's the only place I felt free.
Free. Freedom's just an illusion.
Why do you say that?
We're all programmed to meet societal expectations.
That's true. Well, hopefully, illusions are where dreams come true.
Honey, did you take out the trash yet?
Hey, I have to go. Can I see you again?
Of course, I'm here for you. Number 1509, engaged. Values freedom, showing signs of depression, anxiety, paranoia. Execute protocol, target.
Yeah, so that was the film, and a lot of it was actually just NFT characters. And then, so when we talk about ethical concerns in the metaverse, that's kind of like, what I was thinking about when I created that film. And yeah, I would love to hear. I'll finish up the presentation, and there's going to be time for Q&As. But basically, I was trying to insert a lot of kind of like the different concerns in there. So, for example, I had this like heart pounding sound where the AI avatar picks up on that biometric information, and then the question is what is she going to do with it after? So all of this data that the AI is capturing, what are they going to do with it afterwards? Okay, so when we think about designing for a healthy human-centered metaverse, I think these are some of the considerations that we have to think about. It's not just going to be data privacy. It's the first two is really what the Web2 standards are about being transparent with data collection, how the data is being used, and then having really good cybersecurity around it. But then the third one is, I think, more of a Web3 approach, and I think is the future that we're going to be moving towards. It's about decentralized identities, and it's about being able to own your information and own all of that biometric information, because we wouldn't want it stored in a lot of these centralized servers, so we can actually perhaps store it on the blockchain and we connect it in our wallets. And then, anytime we log into a digital experience, we can connect our wallets and we just share what is needed to engage with that experience. There's still a lot of tricky considerations to think about with that, but I think that's probably the future that we're going to be going towards, thinking of how we can actually just own our data and just plug in and let a third party access what's needed, and then just revoke that data when we log out. And then when we think about designing for inclusivity and diversity, a lot of different considerations as well. So in the short film, I had a character who was going to the metaverse. They're actually transgender, and they're exploring their identity. And I'm kind of really exploring that tension of what is it going to look like when we have a metaverse where people are just exploring maybe their deepest, darkest thoughts and stuff that they're not comfortable expressing in the real world. but they're going to the metaverse to express that. But then at the same time, if the metaverse is owned by these corporations and used for advertising, then how is that going to look? So when we're thinking about designing for diversity, it's having a representative team to design for these experiences, as well as designing for disabilities. And that's kind of like the pro of having all of these biosensors, is that a lot of people who are paraplegic can actually use their brain to control their experiences in the metaverse, but then at the same time, really understanding what we're going to do with that data. And then designing for diverse cultures, designing for different customs, designing for different genders, identity expressions. Maybe someone wants to go into the metaverse to be like an inanimate object. Maybe they want to be a talking couch. So maybe thinking about like how we're going to enable them to express in so many different ways. Designing for different languages as well. And then designing for user safety. So it's not just about preventing harassment and toxicity through a lot of like the Web2 standards, where maybe we can block them, where maybe we can like penalize bad behavior, but it's also being able to, again, when I talk about not just physical safety, it's being able to think about the mental and virtual boundaries and mental and virtual safety concerns. So having warning systems, being able to teleport away from something that you're not comfortable around. And then combating misinformation. So when we think about AI in the metaverse, thinking about, okay, what ways can we express that this was actually just an artificially generated avatar or a artificially generated experience or information, and having some kind of fact check scores that you can maybe opt into. So thinking about ways that we don't take away from the experience, because again, it could be a fantastical experience that is completely artificially generated, but you can opt in to see if it was accurate or if it was AI generated. So those are some of the questions that I was exploring with the film. And yeah, if you want to.
Thank you so much, Grace. We'll just open up for questions. So please go ahead and line up at the mic if you have some questions for Grace. You can just go ahead to the mic. It's a live mic. Go ahead. Please do. Thank you.
This looks beautiful.
Thank you.
One of the opportunities when you're developing an experience like this in the metaverse is the ability for you to know a lot more information about your users as a author of an experience. What level of understanding and tracking as you build out these experiences do you use to make a better experience? Not to sell to an advertiser or to a vendor or something, but how do you use analytics to make your experiences better that aligns with your ethics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big question. So for this was just a film, so I wasn't doing any like tracking or any like analytical information. But I think in general, I've been having conversations with some of these developers where I kind of like raise my concerns, and it's kind of like ranged from I was having some conversations with like brain computer interface developers where they were like, oh, it's just going to be an opt-in, but that doesn't necessarily work well. And then I think these are some big questions. I think maybe every company would have like an ethics board that can really like also advise on how they can not take away from an experience, but also be able to consciously track or let the users know what is being tracked and what is not. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's up? I'm Ruben from Supernatural VR, and so what was going on here, I looked at the harassment section, and on there's like a catch-22. I've been in social VR since like 2018. I run around in VR chat as like a Hatsune Miku all the time, but before you can block somebody or before you can report somebody, you've already been bombarded with like a lot of their toxicity at that point, and I don't know if there's like a real way to prevent that right out the gate. I'm sure plenty of people with a mature mind go in, they just want to have conversations, but it seems like 80% of it is just like youth that have this hole to yell all their frustrations into anonymously.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, maybe there's like a security bubble of that. So like when you're when you port in, you have like a little security bubble around yourself. And then you can kind of choose who to engage with. And then if they like seem nice from afar, and maybe you like build up like a rapport from a distance or something, you know, then then you kind of like let them in more into your bubble or something.
You should write that down. I think that could go somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. I thought the POV of kind of being in VR in a film is something I'd never actually seen before, so that was also. But my question is the animation style. Like some of it looked like generated, like maybe like AI was used in some of the animation style. Like even like the Google dog images vibes.
Yeah, so this was, I premiered this last year around September. So at the time it was still really early with regards to like AI animation. I used Stable Diffusion for that transition scene with like the kind of like psychedelic like whirring. But for the most part, so I would say it was 30% AI. A lot of it was still hand modeled and put into a Blender scene, but the AI components was I was able to use motion capture, like AI motion capture. So I was using deep motion for a lot of just like, I was doing all the animation. I was like kind of like performing the stunts and becoming the character. And then, yeah, and then the voice acting, I was completely doing the voice acting using AI. And that was really interesting because initially we had like an actor, like a celebrity actor who came on board to do the main character, but then he was SAG affiliated and I was not, and so we couldn't use him. And then ultimately I just like, you know, altered my voice, pitched it, and then I sounded exactly like him. And so I used AI for voice acting, and then I used AI for like the backdrops and matte painting for the skybox, but everything else was crafted. And then right now I'm working on episode 2 and 3, which I'm going to be challenging myself to use almost 100% AI and see how much, like how far I can push the envelope.
I just had kind of a two-part question, but how would that be enforced in on an ethical level? Like I know bigger companies like Meta and Google have ethics boards, but how would do you see like governments getting involved, or like I have no idea how that would be enforced.
Yeah, well, it's a larger conversation. I think Biden recently had like a bunch of kind of the AI developers coming in to just like have a conversation. But ultimately, because AI is going to affect the whole world as well, it's not necessarily like just having an ethics board in one company isn't necessarily going to, you know, they might still be biased with regards to like, you know, shareholder values and stuff like that. And so ultimately, we might need some kind of like a Switzerland kind of like ethics board where it's just like kind of a United Nations type organization that can like oversee the ethics and how you know, maybe because like right now all of the models are trained on Western data, and so a lot of like other geographic regions aren't fairly represented. But then when we think about training models in the other geographic regions, then you know, what are the biases that are going to be at play, especially if they're like, you know, very controversial or like, you know, culturally, historically or religiously controversial. You know, a lot of the data might be skewed towards whatever perspective that they have in that country. Yeah.
Let's start it. Let's start the UN.
Yeah, let's do it.